Walt Disney Educational Media Company presents Winnie the Pooh on the Way to School. A set of film strips about getting to school safely. And now, Pooh meets a stranger.
This morning, Pooh thought he was a lucky bear indeed. Here he was, going to school with Christopher Robin and with no one else along. Now, he thought, would be the perfectly best time to ask him a bright question about school. If only he could think of one. Now, it so happened that Pooh was particularly interested in Christopher's school friends, the ones he played with. So thinking about that for a while led him to ask,
do you have lots of different friends, Christopher Robin?
Of course I do, Pooh Bear.
answered Christopher in a careless way.
But what do you mean by different? All my friends are different.
Pooh rubbed a tickle on his nose with his paw before he went on.
Well, I mean, do you play with friends who are like you or friends who are not like you? See, I mean, well, I'm a bear, but I don't play with bears. I play with Piglet, who's a piglet, and Tigger, who's a tigger, and Kanga, who's a kanga, and Roo, who's a roo.
Silly bear. Kanga and Roo are kangaroos.
Oh, yeah. They're kangaroos.
I would say, dear old Pooh, that my friends are not different like that. They are different than I am, but they're a lot like I am, too. And that's mainly the reason I play with them. You see, they're my age, and that's what's important when it comes to playing and having fun.
Now that made Pooh wonder. What did age have to do with playing and having fun?
Well, I play with Piglet and with Tigger and Owl and Eeyore, and we don't know how old we are at all.
Pooh sighed. Christopher's answer was just too hard to understand, especially for a bear with such a little brain.
Hurry along, Pooh. I don't want to be late.
Oh, yes, Christopher. Here I come. Step in. There.
Very good, Pooh. Now, I was saying, I do have some older friends, but they're stronger and faster than I am, and they play a lot rougher, too.
Do you play with them?
In a couple of years, I'll be able to. But now I have trouble keeping up or doing all the things they do. That's not much fun. I think it's wise to play with friends my own size. I'm especially careful if I'm playing with someone who's older and who I don't know. If he gets too rough or starts to bully people, I leave.
That sounds like a very good idea, Christopher. I think that's what I would do, too.
Well, they continued stumping along towards school, Christopher saying that he always brought his new friends home to meet his parents, and Pooh wondering if it was all right to go to a strange place with a brand new friend who was older than you, and Christopher answering that he didn't think it was a good idea.
I'd want to have my parents meet him first, Pooh.
Said Christopher. By now they had reached the highway, and then, quite suddenly, an approaching car slowed and stopped in front of Christopher.
Hi, kid. Going to school?
Yes, sir.
Well, hop in. I'll give you a ride. I'm going your way.
No thanks.
Oh, come on. It's free. No charge, Sonny. You want to bring your friend along, too?
No.
How about a candy bar? No charge.
Oh, I like candy.
I don't want any.
Okay. You sure you don't want to ride? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's your feet.
Well, Pooh didn't know what to think about that. The thought of not getting a ride or a piece of candy was upsetting, to say the least. As he followed Christopher to the sidewalk, all he could say was,
Oh, bother. That looked like such a very lovely candy bar, Christopher. It would have been nice to get just a little teeny tiny taste of it. Yes, it would. After all, it's about time for a little something. Oh, bother. Well, a little ride would have been just as nice, I suppose, but not quite.
Pooh, the reason I didn't get in the car with that man is because he's a stranger. I've never seen him before, and he might be a bad stranger.
A bad stranger, Christopher? What's that?
A bad stranger is someone who is mean to children or hurts them. They're like the people who are mean to animals. But bad strangers look for children, just so they can hurt them.
Oh, dear.
A bad stranger. That was something Pooh had never heard of before. Just the idea of it made him feel very nervous. Couldn't imagine that anyone would want to hurt children. But the look on Christopher's face as he talked about bad strangers told Pooh that it must be true. Then, at that moment, Pooh remembered something. Something that had happened long ago.
But, Christopher, when Tigger came to the 100-acre wood, he was a stranger. And so were Kangaroo and Roo, too. But they weren't bad. No, they were lots of fun.
That's true. Not all strangers are bad, Pooh. Just a few are.
Oh, then, well, how do you tell a good stranger from a bad one?
There's no way to do that, Pooh. Because bad strangers don't look any special way. They look like just ordinary people.
Like ordinary people. What a problem for a bear with very little brain. There had to be a way of recognizing a bad stranger, thought Pooh. Otherwise, he'd never feel safe with a stranger again. So he decided that he ought to imagine a few. Then at least he'd have something to go by.
Christopher Robin, what could a bad stranger look like?
That's hard to say. A bad stranger might be someone you see around a playground or anywhere in a park.
In a park, too?
Yes, even at an empty lot right near your own house.
Oh, well, do you mean just those places?
Oh, no, lots more.
Well, it became clear to Pooh that imagining more strangers wouldn't help him at all. But there had to be a way of telling a good stranger from a bad one. There just had to be.
Oh, yes, there just has to be.
What?
I was just thinking out loud, Christopher. Maybe you can tell a bad stranger by the way he talks. Maybe he's loud, huh? Maybe he sounds mean.
Nope. A bad stranger seems to be like a good stranger. At first, he acts friendly, usually very friendly. He does that because he wants you to feel safe with him. Then he tries to get you away from your neighborhood or the places where you usually play.
Like the man who wanted to give us a ride to school.
And candy, too.
Candy, oh, yes, candy.
It was a trick. A bad stranger uses lots of tricks. Candy, toys. Sometimes he'll offer to pay you money if you'll do some work for him. Or he might stop you on the street and tell you that one of your parents is hurt. Then he'll offer to drive you to the hospital. But that's just another trick.
I suppose that a bad stranger has lots of tricks, huh?
That's right, Pooh.
Oh, bother.
So that's how you recognize a bad stranger, thought Pooh. He tries to get you to go away with him. And he thought that thought over and over again to make sure he wouldn't forget it.
Think.
Now, a frightening possibility occurred to Pooh.
Dear, oh dear, suppose a bad stranger tried to get me away from my friends Piglet and Tigger and Eeyore. Oh, whatever would I do? Maybe I'd better imagine a few awfully very brave things to do just in case. Christopher Robin, what would a small and very, very friendly bear, like me, for instance, do if a very bad stranger tried to take me away?
Well, the first thing is to run away from him as fast as you can.
Yes, fast as I can.
Go straight to the nearest grown-up you know. A friend, a neighbor, a teacher, or a policeman. And tell him what has happened.
Yes, tell him what has happened.
If a stranger tries to grab you, scream.
Scream?
Scream loudly and run to the nearest grown-up. And tell him that someone tried to grab you and take you away. Sometimes, Pooh, a bad stranger will try to pull you into his car.
Oh, then I scream and run to the nearest grown-up.
Yes, and you try to get the license number of his car, too. You know, Pooh, bad strangers sometimes go to movie theaters.
Oh, you mean they try to take you away from there, too?
Yes, Pooh. So if some stranger sitting next to you tries to touch you, you run to the nearest usher and tell him about it. And what's the matter, Pooh?
I wish there were no bad strangers, Christopher Robin.
So do I. But there are, so I never forget it. I've made up some safety rules about bad strangers. I always follow them, and my friends do, too.
What are they, Christopher?
Well, I always get home from play before dark. At a park, or zoo, or beach or picnic grounds. I always go to the restroom with a friend or a grown-up. I try never to go alone. I stay with my friends when I'm playing with them, especially in wooded or bushy places. Finally, if a stranger asks me if I want to play in his house or his garage, I go right home and ask my parents for permission.
I'll remember those rules, Christopher Robin, and then when I get back to the 100-acre wood, I'll tell Piglet and Eeyore and everybody all about them and about bad strangers, too.
You're very smart, Pooh.
Thank you.
That's the right thing to do, because everyone should know about bad strangers for their own safety.
With that, Christopher gave Pooh a hug and trotted off, saying that it might be a good idea if the two of them played Pooh sticks when he got home from school. But Pooh barely heard a word of that. What was going through his mind was,
You're a very smart bear, Pooh. You're a very smart bear.
that was something a bear of very little brain didn't hear often, and of course it made him quite happy. So off he went toward home, thinking that he was indeed lucky that some questions had popped into his head that morning, and thinking that,
Maybe someday I'll be able to think of some more. Well, one or two anyway.
It's just our friends, but we pretend when Halloween is here.